Calum Marshall,
David,
thank you for being here, mate.
thank you for having me.
For those that don't know, Calum is an ADHD coach. He's a boxer. And what I learned on our walk along the beach a few weeks ago is that you're someone who has run from pain from a long time, but most importantly, found the courage to face it. And there are so many challenges and self imposed limitations that especially ADHD folk experience. But what I think really stood out to me about your work, mate, is you help them realize that it's actually their greatest superpower. And there are lots of, friends and loved ones that I know who've been diagnosed, who might be listening right now, who have felt that. And so your work is really, really important to help them and really anyone who has perhaps felt like they've been defined by a label or diagnosis to take their power
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
So lots of respect for you, brother, and really, really grateful that you're here.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, seriously.
Yeah, amazing. Before we get into what your work entails, I
Mm,
want to press rewind for a bit and talk about, I guess, what kickstarted this journey for you.
mm.
Because what I heard when we went for our walk was that there was a lot of numbing and escapism
Yeah.
and real tower moments for you, especially when you were in the clubbing scene. Can you perhaps, just share what was going on for you at the time and what made you realize that, things needed to change for you personally to bring you to, what you're doing today?
Well, ultimately, it was the inability to accept who I was as a person. I was trying to fit into the mold of who I thought people would like. And it was exhausting, draining, felt like I was really just surviving instead of actually living each day and constantly trying to people please, using all of my energy to run myself rampant with whatever job I was working. And the funny part about it, David, is I was really good at the jobs that I did. And I think that's consistent for a lot of people with ADHD is that they can be extremely successful in their careers, and yet their home life can be quite unhealthy. And yeah, the motivation of trying to fit in and create a version of yourself that people will accept can be quite a strong motivator. It can get you quite a long way. And I think for the longest time I was operating on that until it got to the point where it was just so inauthentic and unfulfilling that I couldn't continue.
How are you trying to fit in, and with whom were you trying to fit in?
Well, that was hard for me because my family, who I love dearly, they had raised me on philosophy. They had raised me on Hindu traditions, big presence of meditation, spirituality in our house. And dad was a practicing Catholic. And so I went to Catholic schools. So I had this basically living two lives. So I'd have all my friends. And then once I got a really like 9 to 5 job, I was living three lives. So I had my home life, which was the golden child, trying to be this amazing person all the time, but never touched any drugs, never did any alcohol, like was just being successful, smashing it in life, doing really well. And then my career, I was a guy that used to be a DJ that had run nightclubs, so pretty cool, pretty hip in that way, but also extremely capable and always with energy, always, yep, no worries, I'll get it done for you as soon as possible. And so high achieving there, and then also could like party really hard. So it was work hard, play hard there. But then at home, putting on the mask of being this spiritually intact person. And then in my share house where I was living with my friends, I was a full-time stoner. Yeah, to alleviate myself of all of the stress and the pain that I had to go through to try and uphold those two other lives. I numbed it all out with alcohol, various other drugs, and marijuana was the best weed every single night. Couldn't get to sleep. I didn't dream for 3 years. I didn't even notice that until one day I was a couple of weeks without it, and all of a sudden I had a dream. And so, yeah, I was numbing myself out of exhaustion because I couldn't stop with all of the other masks and hats and personas I was trying to uphold. And one of the hardest parts about it is that I could do all of that. I could fake that with my parents, but in a way knowing that was my most authentic self. I could fake it at work and I could fake it at home. So I was living this entire life that I knew was just not me. And yet I could do it and do it successfully and people liked me. And I was like, I had a great career. I had a good relationship with my parents. But then after a while, you just start to wonder, why do I need to do all of that? And then you realize that you're living in a relationship with someone that you really don't love. It was just comfort. It's just trying to ease the pain of living this unfulfilling life.
I mean, I've heard of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, but this was like Dr. Jekyll and Hyde and Calum Marshall. There's three lives that you're balancing simultaneously, which sounds incredibly exhausting and draining and overwhelming. What were you afraid would happen if you just stopped the pretending and the masking?
That I'd be completely alone. I felt like if my parents knew who I was outside of my relationship with them, they wouldn't love me, which isn't true. It's not rational. And I eventually told them what had been going on. And of course, they still love me. I felt like at work, if I was more of myself, I was speaking to you earlier about being my authentic self. And sometimes I'm low and doing my best not to be anything but how I am in that moment. And when I would try and do that at work, it was met with a lot of concern. I would I might show up to work one day and I'm not in the best state of mind and bit quieter, a bit more quiet than usual. And that would get hit with this concern, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Like, what's going on?" And like in my heart, I knew that I was being my most authentic self. But when you receive that kind of feedback from someone, you feel as if you need to change to fit in. And so that was basically, I'd taken on all of these different responsibilities of being the perfect person in any situation. And so obviously that takes its toll and you can only do it for so long.
What was the tipping point for you when you realized, like, I can't keep this up anymore?
There was never, and I've been asked this question before, but it was an accumulation. It was just it wasn't one day where I just decided, no, this is not it anymore. It was me always having that side of me that knew I could be better than this. And so I'd always kind of tried and I just kind of kept trying. And what they say for people that smoke, don't quit quitting. Because that's the same thing. It was just never quit quitting. And I just kept going. I knew I could be better, and I tried and tried this and I tried that and I tried this and I tried that. And when I got out of my most recent relationship, I'd been with her for 4 something years, wonderful person, but we were there out of comfort for each other. And once I stepped away from that, the next day I didn't need weed anymore. I was like, damn, I'd been numbing myself so much. I've been escaping, running. I was using that to stay in that situation. One of our housemates pointed out, she said, "Do you guys even love each other?" And we kind of looked at each other like, well, yeah. And she said it a few times, and I'd always wondered, like, how could she say that? But then in reality, she was right. We were not in a loving relationship. We were there to help each other through. And I think that COVID was a weird period in people's lives where maybe they did accept sort of that comfort. So that's how it panned out for me. Another point is when I was in my car around the corner from the share house I was living in at the time, and I was in the front seat with on the phone to who would then become my life coach. And he was asking, like, "What's going on for you?" Like, and I was just talking about how I couldn't get off the bags. It was just such a big pain point for me, and I was just crying. And then I accepted his help, and that was one of the most amazing things because a little bit further down the track, I was still in that fight with myself, and I found that one night I'd gone out the night before, and then I had to do this big drive to a gig, and that was one of the hardest things for me was driving to a gig or driving anywhere the next day after having had a night out. I had this deep fear of getting pulled over, and if I got pulled over, I'd lose my license, and if I lost my license, I would sever my perceived identity with my parents. And so that was like terrifying. That could never happen. And so I I was in this moment of fear, having gone out the night before. I had to travel this long distance, and I messaged my life coach. I said, "Oh, this is how I'm feeling." And he just goes, "Man, I love you." And even thinking about it now, I get emotional because for me, that was just this pivotal moment where I realized no matter what I'd done, or no matter what fears I was facing or challenges, I was still worthy of love. I could be loved. And that was life changing. If there was ever a moment, it'd probably be that one, because I'd convinced myself that I was not worthy of love unless I was this person in this situation, or that person in that situation, or that person in that situation. And I was weaving this web of living a life trying to be that person at any moment. But then this one incident, he said, "I love you." And I was like, I'm actually worthy of love, even though I've done that. And the paradox of it is that that's when I started to heal. Because that, instead of him saying, no, you shouldn't have done that. And I know, because I beat myself up enough. I knew I shouldn't have done that. But then he comes to me and he said, you know what? Instead of saying, no, you shouldn't have done that, you can do better next time, it was just, I love you. And I was like, okay, that was probably that's probably the closest to a tipping point for me.
That's really beautiful, man. And, I totally get what it's like to live in that state of fear and anxiety and paranoia when you're using and holding on to so much shame and guilt has been my journey in feeling like, I'm a bad person for doing this and, risking my life and creating potential harm for myself or others. And the last thing that I feel like I'd be worthy of is love from another human being. So I feel how much that meant to you and how much that shifted things for you.
Yeah.
When you talk about healing, though, obviously every journey is very different. Like, what did that and what has that process been looking like for you since you heard those words from your life coach?
That I didn't have to earn anything, that I didn't have to prove that I was worthy of love. That foundation allowed me to start stepping out of the person I was not. And that really started to set me on the path of quitting more. So I used to quit every Sunday, as I'm sure a lot of people have done. But I started to just get a little bit further, and I started to get a bit further. And then it wasn't long before my coach started said, "Hey, you love this stuff, this coaching, and why don't you consider doing that at one point?" Because I do. I loved knowing more about myself. And I think when you ask about healing, that was one of the biggest parts. If it was just understanding who I am as a person and my relationship between my thoughts and awareness and consciousness and my emotions, and what are they? And what is this idea I have of myself? Or what are these limiting beliefs that I have? Why do I have difficulty sitting still at the end of a day? Why do I have difficulty sitting still at all? Why do I feel like I need to be distracted all the time? And so for me, the healing process was getting really introspective and just looking deep into who I am as a being, what a human being is, what an experience is, and what a memory is, what an emotion is, how is a thought and emotion intertwined, and how does it affect our body. And I just got super interested in understanding myself at the deepest level I could. And I think for me, one of the biggest parts on that healing journey was when I heard someone say that the smoking or the drugs isn't the problem, it's the solution. What are they talking about? But that for me unlocked a new level of perceiving and looking at things, because instead of going, okay, smoking, stop smoking, it was, why do you smoke? What is that giving you? Because it was serving a purpose in my life. It was a solution. What was the problem? And so I started looking at all that. I started looking at things on a much deeper level. Like, okay, I feel very uncomfortable right now. Why? What's going on? What is this? And then from there, I just dive deeper and deeper into who I am as a being, just the thoughts, the emotions, and and how that all made up me, and then was I them, and just really diving into the essence of us as a person, so I could then understand maybe why I was acting in so many different ways. Why was I running? What was I running from? As soon as I shifted the lens of, okay, all my drug taking, all my alcohol was the problem, and started looking at it as the solution, that allowed me to then go a step deeper and go, okay, what am I trying to fix here? What am I running from? Like, what's actually going on here? Because I could quit drugs every week. I got really good at quitting every Sunday. Fantastic. I think of all these wonderful thoughts, all these ideas. Yeah, fantastic. Great. But gets to the middle of the week, to the end of the week, and I haven't addressed the issue or the problem that was lying underneath. And that was really my inability to be able to be uncomfortable or face discomfort or handle discomfort or be able to sit with an emotion. And because of that, I would numb myself out. I would try and run away into all these things. So by the end of the week, when I still hadn't figured out how to sit with my emotions and handle them, well, what did you think I was going to do? I was going to go back to the tools that I'd been using, my solutions that had worked so well for me for so long, except had such severe side effects.
Man, I'm getting goosebumps as you describe that because it's parallels my own journey of discovery around substances, numbing out, and escapism completely. Uh, and what you described in many ways is like similar to a framework that's helped me understand that in the way that you say that, the substance use is a solution, the behavior is always downstream. Like it's the last thing that happens. And so much of what we try and do is focused on changing the behavior, but that's the effect, right? Like as as you and I both know, and listeners will know of the show as well, like the root cause is the suppressed emotion, is the suppressed pain, the anger, the grief, the sadness, the fear. And when I like learned about that and realized, okay, well, this I've been suppressing this emotion and now it's manifesting as like a tension in my body, maybe in my chest, or I'm getting headaches. And then I'm not addressing that. And so it's showing up as anxiety or depression or overthinking or rumination. And then I'm not addressing that. And so my only solution at that point is behaviorally, what am I doing to silence that internal noise and anguish and,
Exactly. Yeah.
suffering? So it's such a breakthrough, and I'm really, I I'm really touched that you're able to find that for yourself, man, and experience this kind of transformation. I know when we walked as well, you mentioned that your father has played like a huge role in your own, obviously not only your own development, but even your healing and the journey that you take your clients on as well. You mentioned he was Catholic.
Yes, well, born and raised in Orbost, Victoria in the 1940s.
Yeah.
So that was basically all there was. So it was Catholic, like going to every morning mass type Catholic. So he ended up moving away from that anyway. I'm sure you had more to say there, but he ended up moving away from that, funnily enough, but still stuck with it every week. Just wasn't as devout as maybe he was in the younger years.
And so how has his presence and his own journey influenced you or inspired you and your own healing and work today?
Well, both my parents have been part of the School of Philosophy in Victoria. That's where they met, funnily enough.
Philosophy or theosophy?
Philosophy,
Philosophy.
school school of philosophy,
Yeah.
and my father helped start a primary school that was run by the School of Philosophy, and so that's where I went. So from very young, I was learning Sanskrit, meditating. Both my parents meditated an hour a day for my whole life. And as a child, I was read the Bible at night, and we sung the perfect prayer, which was in Sanskrit. And so I'm painting the picture for you that I've always had a strong influence of spirituality, philosophy, faith, wisdom. There's always been such a strong emphasis on that in my life. And I am today extremely grateful for that. But as a child, it was isolating because you saw things differently. You had weird kind of cuckoo parents compared to the others. I wasn't allowed to game. Parents wouldn't let me game. They had a phone. Didn't really even have much exposure to music. It was just, in looking back at it now, it was it was good childhood because I didn't form those addictions to gaming. I'm not addicted to my phone. I'm not really addicted to TV. And so they really heavily influenced me in a lot of ways that in those respects. But at the time, all I wanted to do was just be able to game because that's what all my friends were
Mm.
doing. And I have a lot of respect for my parents because they were able to stay true to what they believed in, which was that all the stimulation in this world that we're living in now with video games, phones, TV screens was distracting us from what life could be and the essence of it. And so they raised me in quite a traditional sense with the go outside and play. But then I hated them for that for years because I felt like they made me a loner. Like they felt like I made me so different, even though I wasn't. It just felt like I was this too different and weird for anyone to want to play with. I remember saying to my mum one day that I wish she was more like my neighbour's mum. Cruel, cruel. But I was suffering so much hurt of the sense that I was not normal. I just wanted to be normal so badly and to fit in. And my parents, in my mind, were the ones that were holding me back from being able to do that. But in reality, they were allowing me to be free. They're allowing me to limit how much I became reliant on the things that we are so emotionally dependent on these days. And that would have been so hard for them because I was literally telling them I wanted them to be like a different parent, but they stuck true to it. And for my father specifically, he could be real angry sometimes. And for me, that in a lot of ways meant that I wanted to suppress my anger for a long time, which is when you talk about boxing as well, which is why I'm doing that now because I'm allowing myself to be able to start to process some of those emotions. So in as many good aspects that I'm very grateful for the way they brought me up and they raised me, there was also obviously, along with anyone, you have your experience from what we were talking about on our walk as well, that some of the burdens that you can carry on from being raised by a parent can be really difficult to work through later on. And some of the things you can learn to avoid can really start to hold you back if you're not careful. Then going back to the asking about the healing journey too, just being able to be now conscious of that and choose to work through it and find healthy ways to do it has opened up a lot of doors and it's exciting.
And an outcast selling black sheep. And I think if I reflect on my journey, while it has felt, like you pointed out, incredibly isolating, I feel like it's also turned into a superpower in many ways as well. because I believe it's helped me have more compassion for people who feel different as
Mhm.
well, which is incredibly important, I believe, in
Mm.
the work that we're doing. Given your lane is ADHD, how how has that shown up for you in your life? I mean, you spoke about even before we jumped on the potty, just struggling to sit still,
Mm.
and so how has it actually manifested for you in your life? And what have some of the thoughts been about what you're noticing about yourself?
Well, it manifested obviously in the many different masks that I was able to wear and the self medication as my only way of stopping. When I would smoke weed, I would stop, and I was incapable of doing it in any other way. And so it showed up for me in a lot of ways through discomfort and trying to constantly be busy as a way of avoiding what might happen if I stopped. And that's, I would say, quite similar for a lot of people. I think with ADHD, it's just so much more intense. And also a lot of it came down to because I was able to work so hard and achieve so much and really just be able to maintain such a high level of outcome, then I learned to expect that level of reward that, or another what other people might refer to as that sense of accomplishment, the dopamine, right? Because I was so able to achieve those levels. The difficulty there and the flip side of it is the crashes on the other side because you're able to maintain such a high level of achievement for so long and work ethic, and you're able to achieve all these things, and everyone's praising you, and you're feeling fantastic about yourself. And then naturally, what comes up must come down. So then you're faced with those downs, but then you don't want to be in the down, of course. So you try and up yourself. But then when you up yourself, you're not giving or allowing your body to rest and recover. And so you're pushing down those emotions, those experiences that you don't want to experience, those feelings that you don't want to sit with, those thoughts that you don't want to acknowledge. You push them down by trying to up yourself. And so then it's instead of being sustainable, you're ultimately just trailing off until you hit a big crash. So I think one of the biggest challenges, and especially it was for me, was acknowledging that yes, I can achieve and do all these amazing things. But if I set that as my expectation to be doing all those things all of the time and operating at this level, I'm going to burn myself out. And and the hard part about that is because instead of saying, okay, I want to operate at this level all the time, I'm going to allow myself to maybe not operate at that level the whole time. You have to get used to this new sustainable level of sense of accomplishment. And if your sense of self, if your sense of identity, sense of self worth is attached to what you can accomplish, lowering what you're going to allow yourself to commit to and accomplish means, in a way, you're lowering your sense of self worth. And so then I had to try and figure out, okay, well, if I'm going to do that, I have to learn to be okay with that. And going back to what we were saying before about looking into myself, my relationship between myself, my thoughts, my emotions, if I was able to do that, then okay, if I'm lowering my sense of self worth, is that what my sense of self worth is? Is that what gives me worth? Is what I accomplish where my worth comes from? Because if I was to take away all of my accomplishments, would I not still be worthy? Well, yes, but I don't believe that.
So just on that, because this is something that has been like very alive in my journey, and I'm sure is very listeners to this show struggles with, is tying your identity to achievement. How did you practically
Mm,
unhook those things? How did you practically, you said you didn't believe that you're worthy without achievement. How
Yeah.
did you get to that place where you had firm belief that you were worthy regardless of what you accomplished?
One of the ways that I would like to suggest someone to help themselves with this is to look at it instead of winning and losing, as winning and learning. Why on earth do I say that? Because, well, accomplishment for someone might be amazing, fantastic, incredible. For another person, it might be whatever. If a small business owner makes their first sale, oh my God, this is amazing. If a person who's been in business for 10 years makes a sale, great, awesome, that's fantastic to help another person. So it's that perspective. And I think for a lot of us, we live in a society where we are graded on things all the time. We're graded on our school papers, we're graded on first, second, and third, we win in sport. And because we don't really have an idea of who we are as a person, we allow ourselves, our position in society to be governed by what we have achieved, what we've won, what we've been able to be successful at, the people that we know, the status. We use all these worldly things to gather worth and value for ourselves. But then the question is, if all of that went away, would you still be there? Yes. Like same as the thoughts and the emotions. If the thoughts and the emotions went away, would you still be there? Yes. Because if your mind goes blank sometimes, are you still there? Yes. So if your accomplishments and everything went away, then are you still there? Yes. And because you're there, because you're alive, because you are a being that is in this existence, in this world, you are capable. Just like I suggest it this way to my clients often. It's you have a pet, you have a pet cat. You don't judge the cat on its value or its worth by what it can achieve. You see that cat and you see it as being it's valuable and worthwhile just for being alive, just for being there. There's no list of accomplishments on that cat that says can jump through hoops, doesn't meow too much. There's none of that. But we think about ourselves differently. We look at ourselves and we go, okay, what have I achieved today? Have I done all that stuff? If I've done all that stuff, then I'm worthy. Great, awesome. I've lived up to the expectations I have of myself. But we don't treat animals and pets in that same way. And so I think that's really the distinction there is going, okay, if you would look at a cat, you look at your pet, you give unconditional love and you can see that cat, that pet of yours as being valuable. It doesn't have to do anything to earn that from you. So why don't you give yourself that same love?
That's beautiful, man. I could never expect a dog or a cat to to do more, to be more enough, or to stop doing something
Yeah.
to be more enough in my eyes. Like they're just, beautiful, furry,
Yeah.
loving creatures. So I think that frame is super helpful for people to look at. And even what you've shared around, like, what I'm hearing is that sort of contemplative practices approach where, you're not your thoughts and you're not your emotions. If the thought is, I haven't done enough today and I haven't ticked off these boxes, then I'm not performing or I'm falling behind. And it's sort of like getting addicted to those thoughts and identified with those thoughts
Yeah. Yeah.
is realizing that, you are not those thoughts. Like you're the observer, you're the awareness behind it. And that awareness or that soul or that observer, whatever you want to call it, is fundamentally worthy because it exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
In terms of your journey with ADHD though, and noticing these patterns in yourself, what I'm really curious about, because what you've mentioned that you help your clients with is being able to thrive with ADHD
Mm.
and even to thrive without medication as well. So how, like, what's helped you personally be able to see it as a superpower as opposed to a limitation, and how do you empower your clients to do the same?
Great question. Great question. It would a lot of it come back to understanding who we are as beings, which is what we've spoken about already. And from that perspective, you can see your brain and your thoughts for what it is. There's a Harvard psychiatrist, I can't quite remember his name, but he really nailed the idea of what ADHD is. It's it's having a Ferrari engine for a brain, but bicycle brakes, right? So you have the ability to do all this amazing stuff, like go really fast, achieve, win incredible things. But some of the things that we struggle with ADHD is slowing down because we're not getting so much natural dopamine. It's understandable that you'd want to be achieving all the time to feel that sense of accomplishment. So what we struggle with is slowing down. And so much about my work is helping people to slow down. And practically, what that means is implementing things each day that allow you to do that consistently. For instance, I talk about emotional regulation, like sitting still or meditation, as the same as having a shower. And if you go to one of those Vipassana meditations, wonderful experience, fantastic, awesome. But if you treated showering the same way, you'd be really stinky for 6 months of the year, and then you'd be real clean for a week and a half, and then you'd be going back to real stinky real quick. We need to do the same as someone with ADHD. We need to do the same when it comes to regulating our nervous system. It has to be done consistently. But the problem with that is that most people with ADHD are trying to fix it quickly because they want to fix it and then get on to the next thing. They want to get the accomplishment and move on. But it's not something that can be done quickly. It's not like go on that big Vipassana and you'll be great for the next 12 months. They want that instant solution. So it's about slowing down and doing one thing at a time, or at least doing one thing at a time for 5 minutes and implementing little habits into your day. For instance, yes, and we hear about it all the time, gratitude. It is so important because for so many years, people with ADHD have believed that they are the problem because they are incapable of operating in a way in which other people will deem acceptable without stressing themselves out. And so they've got, then they're either fear that they're too much or not enough. And so when we are grateful each morning, we are again coming back to understanding ourselves, using our brain, which is a very important practice because instead of allowing our thoughts to govern who we are, we can use our thoughts to find what we want. And that is the simple practice of it. But the hard sell, especially when it comes to ADHD clients, is helping them to do that one piece at a time because they want you to give them all of the fixes straight away. So the coaching aspect comes into it because I'm there to help them to just do one thing at a time. We're just going to do this for the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to make sure you do it. And you can come back at the end of the 2 weeks and you can tell me that you've done it or you haven't. If you haven't, we'll talk about it. So, and I have clients that come on, they say, like, it feels like it's not enough. And that's exactly why it's exactly doing what it's supposed to be doing because it's not satisfying that immediate need to feel okay again. Because then that whole loop, that cycle is based on the idea that we're not enough, we're not good enough as we are. We need something to be fixed. We need a fix, which is the same reason why people go get drugs and things. Same why I did it for so long. I felt like I was not enough. I was incapable of being happy enough on my own. So I needed something else to help me do it. And slowing down is the most pivotal point or decision or practice that you can implement as someone with ADHD. And it's going to be really hard at the start because all those thoughts are going to keep hammering around in your head. But going back to the quote, the Ferrari and the bicycle brakes, each time you slow down, you're improving the capacity of your brakes. So if you are a Ferrari engine that's roaring along a racetrack, if you have bad brakes, you're going to crash into the wall. That's essentially what happens when people operate at a high level and then the nervous system can't take it anymore, so they crash. So when it comes to that quote, it nails it because it describes the problem perfectly. The ADHD coaching process is increasing your brakes capacity.
Yeah. And I think I know I know and appreciate how valuable slowing down has been, and that's been a big part of my journey with, meditation or breath work or just emotionally processing stuff. But let's say someone with ADHD is listening right now and they have been in go, go, go mode for as long as they can remember, perhaps since they were a child.
Yeah.
And they're in their 20s or their 30s or their 40s now. And, they have so much on their plate with work. They're balancing multiple projects. They want to
Mm,
see all their friends.
mm,
They want to maintain a thriving social life. They want to go out. They want to party hard. They want to travel. They
yeah,
have all these things, this seemingly endless to-do list, and they're terrified of slowing down. The last thing they
yeah.
can think about is slowing down. Like that's it. It
Mm.
it seems it doesn't even seem feasible or viable. Like the only option is just to continue, doing the next thing. What would you tell them?
Well, start small. You have to start small, and it's not going to fix all your problems straight away. It's really the only way. You can make big changes, but they will not last. Anyone with ADHD who's listening has made big changes and they haven't lasted. Everyone. And there's a reason why they don't last. It's because we're not having, where our nervous system isn't capable of maintaining that change. So we self sabotage after a couple of weeks when it gets too hard. So slowing down doesn't have to be done in the same way that you do everything else. It doesn't have to be, okay, from now on, I'm going to start eating food from home only, making that huge change that lasts 2 weeks and then you order Uber Eats. It's like, throw that out the window. Make this change, making big change, make that go away. No more big change. If you want something to last, if you've built up this massive life like the one you described of just busyness, of workaholicism, whatever that word is, and just constantly busyness and running away and escapism. And the fact of the matter is, you're probably doing a lot of good in the world, which plays with your brain a little bit too, because you're like, no, I'm doing the right thing. But really, you're escaping if it's for the wrong intention. The only way that you're going to be able to make sustainable change and allow yourself to even introduce it in a meaningful way is by doing it slowly. And so that's why with my clients, it's 2 minutes of silence, 2 minutes. And yeah, even that's hard. 2 minutes. But what that starts to do is reveal to yourself how little time you give to actually slowing down. And so it's as much about the act of doing it as it is the realization of how little you are. And so in the mornings, like one of the first things is it's purpose and gratitude. It's like actually purpose is a big, big part of it. And that's what the very first session, that's the very first thing we work on. And then regulation comes second. Because if you haven't got a reason why you're doing it, then we fall away. Having a reason why you want to do something is imperative to being able to actually continue with it when things get difficult. So it's so important. Consider what the purpose is and have a direction and just make a decision on what that is. It doesn't have to be a forever, but right now, this is where I'm going. And then train your brain to be able to find good things in your life with gratitude or positivity. It's either the train your brain. Don't be identified with the good thoughts. Train your brain to find the good things in your life already because it does a damn good job of finding all the reasons why you can't stop. It's time to start using it to find the reasons why you can. And then just doing that slowly. So piece by piece. And that's the only way. No more big changes. That's the one thing. No more big changes because they don't last and they will not last.
Indeed, man. Yeah, incremental steps, I think, and building that self-trust along the way helps build that momentum. I know I've tried and failed multiple times when I've tried to tackle something like giving up, you know, drinking or substances, going full cold turkey straight off the bat, was never really successful for me.
Mm,
It was a
mm,
process of titration,
yeah.
slowly.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you talk about the purpose because I think if we don't have a really inspiring vision that pulls us forward, that's emotionally charged around, wanting to, to provide for your family, to be able to pay off your parents' mortgage, to be able to take your sweetheart around the world to visit your favorite destinations. If you don't have something that really, really inspires you,
Yeah.
it's going to be really difficult for you to commit to something. And you've committed to boxing, which I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
and it's inspired me to get into it as well.
But you used to do fighting, right? You were doing MMA or something?
Yeah, I did taekwondo for
Taekwondo.
about 7 years thereabouts,
Yeah.
5, 7 years, and so I've definitely flirted with the idea of getting back into it, and I intend
Mm.
to. I know you have a fight,
Mm.
your first fight night for boxing in, is it next week or 2 weeks
2
time?
weeks, 2 yeah, literally 2 weeks from now.
2
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned around how boxing's actually helped you with that nervous system capacity piece, and also
Mm,
processing anger as
mm,
well,
mm,
that was sort of stored from an early age. Yeah, can you elaborate on how boxing has actually supported you and what you've noticed in yourself since taking yourself through this, and having this commitment and this discipline to this practice, and to processing or channeling your emotions through
mm.
a sport or an art like boxing?
Absolutely. Well, it started off as being something that I needed to learn to defend myself. I'd always identified as being a lover, not a fighter, and I still consider myself that way. But there's a quote, just if they don't shoot the gun doesn't mean it's not deadly, you know? So I wanted to have the capacity, but then choose not to use it. But should that ever come a time that I needed to use it, I was with my family, I was defending someone that I love, standing up for something I believed in. That's when I wanted to have the ability to be able to do it. And it also came into me running my own business. I needed to learn to fight for what I believed in. I needed to learn to be able to stand on my business and say, no, I believe in this and I'm going to stick with it. And so I found that boxing was a good physical manifestation of me being able to practice that skill. So then when something came up in a business environment, or someone was challenging me on a sales call, or in a session, or in real life, I was able to remain calm in that moment and just say, okay, no, this is what I believe in, and find the words to be able to communicate that instead of falling back into my shell of people pleasing or submission. So for me, it was also being able to learn to channel the anger. I think for a long time, like I said at the start, with my father being quite an angry man at times, and him having gotten into the philosophy and the self development and the spirituality journey in a way, in an effort to work through that. I think one of the main things that I'm able to take his journey on and then move it into the next stage is being able to stand up for ourselves. For him, he was obviously modeled on his father and his family, and that was in the 40s. That was World War II. That was a dark time. And emotional intelligence was not a thing. And so he was doing the best he could, but I was kind of handed the baton and said, okay, I'm going to go out and do it better. I use that foundation to do it better. And so the next stage for us as a family in our development was we need to learn to be emotionally intelligent, which we already have kind of gotten to, we've done a lot of work on. And the next stage is being able to fight and stand up for what we believe in. That was something that would allow me to be able to manage and handle and express the anger in a safe environment, in a respectful environment, in a way in which I wasn't going to cause any damage to anyone that wasn't expecting it. And I think for a long time, I suppressed so much of that. As at a primary school, I was pretty angry kid. I was a bully's dream. extreme because I was so reactive and I couldn't control myself. So I would get so angry, but I couldn't fight. So I'd make an absolute fool of myself. Everyone would laugh at me. And then at high school, it's the same. I'd try and fight and stand up for what I believed in, and I'd make a fool of myself. I can be completely embarrassed. And so then I stopped fighting. I stopped standing up for what I believed in. And I think in a lot of ways that played a part in my relationships and the masks I had to wear because I felt like I couldn't stand up or be confident in who I was. So I submitted to what everyone else wanted me to be. So now that I've done so many years of working through this, this was the natural next phase of being able to, okay, now I'm at least have an understanding of who I am, and I'm able to help people heal. The next part of this, okay, is learning to fight for what I believe in. And that's how boxing came into the picture. So it also has given me the opportunity to prove that what I'm doing is real. Like, if someone with ADHD is someone living unmedicated with ADHD, applying all the different behavioral strategies and things that I do each day and I help my clients to implement works. Because I'm able to train 9 times a week now for boxing. I'm able to maintain running my own business, relationship with my partner, family, at the same time as being able to find time to myself to regulate and then come do something like this and then do all of that. But at the same time as being able to not run away into drugs. And follow through is such a hard thing to do for anyone. But for ADHD, it's difficult because we feel like it's easier to not do it and not fail than do it and fail, because then it would challenge our sense of self-worth due to it being based on accomplishment. So not following through when things get difficult, when things aren't rewarding anymore, because the first 2 weeks are going to be fantastic. But then I've gone through that dip and I've gone through it. Like, I go through all the behavior. I do all these techniques and these strategies. It doesn't make me exempt from going through those emotional ups and downs. It just means that I now have the capacity to be able to handle it. Like what you were saying before, it's so much about being able to handle ourselves in those moments and not run away. It doesn't mean that they don't happen. It's that the discomfort's always going to be there. It's not a matter of finding a life in which there's no discomfort, because if you wanted that, you live in a house with no walls and, I mean, with no windows and just a light and just be separate from everything and never be threatened by anyone or anything. But then you miss out on the whole world. And so it's so much about what we do as our work, and boxing has then allowed me to continue working on is facing the discomfort, getting into a ring against someone. Like, you literally have someone that's going to start trying punching you in the head. There's not many more like, whoa, freaky moments. And so then facing the fears, being okay with the fact that I'm probably going to get punched up a few times. And I have. Oh my God, the first time I got in the ring, David, I can't tell you, the first time I got in the ring, I can't tell you how much of an emotional release this was, but I got in the ring and I got beaten up hard. And I got in the car and then just broke down. He proper broke down, like hysterical crying, and was just flowing up. Like, it was just all of this stuff it was this huge release. And I would and I try not to logic my way through these things, try just to let them be felt. But for me, I think it was a massive moment for me of, okay, I can fail. I'm going to be okay. And that was a really hard thing to experience, but at the same time, as it was so liberating. I felt like I didn't have to live up to this expectation of not failing anymore and being successful all the time. I felt like I could fail and still be okay. Taking it back to when I did drugs and my coach told me that he loved me, like that I could fail and I was still going to be okay. And I think that's such a powerful message that that we can fail and we're gonna be all right. And the perception I said before, there's like we either win or we learn. Like, I got to learn so much from that moment where I failed and he said that to me. And how much did I learn? It changed the direction of my life. Like most people, like some people might say that's a failure because I'd gone out and I'd seshed the night before. But it wasn't a failure, it was a lesson. And like every single time you fail, it's a lesson. So I got bashed up in the ring. Lesson, huge lesson. Because then I was able to release and see that I could fail and still be me. And I didn't have to prove that I was worthy. So yeah, boxing has been quite the emotional journey. Just being able to channel the anger in a safe environment, to be able to face failure in the face and to learn to physically and mentally stand up for what I believe in.
You're a hero, Calum. Yes, you're training 9 times a week. Yes, you're running a business. Yes, you're creating impact and you're serving clients and you're walking alongside people who, are struggling in the same way that you did. Yes, you're holding down a beautiful relationship. Yes, you're doing all these things, but what's more is who you've become as a result of this journey. You are such a kind, heart-centered man. The young version of you who, is out seshing would be so fucking proud of you right now, man.
I think you would. Thanks, David. That's really nice and kind of you.
Yeah, man. What does being liberated mean to you, Cal?
Well, I have a quote that I'll share with you. But to me, it means being able to be me. And what I mean by that is free of the identity and ideas that go around in my mind. To be able to have something come up in my mind, a limiting belief, a thought, an idea, good or bad, actually, and see it for what it is. See the thought that says, "Oh, Calum, you're amazing," and just, that's a thought. Or see the thought that you're a failure. How could you do that? Oh, that's a thought. Or the fear that comes up in me, the shame, the guilt, the difficult times, the discomfort that comes up in me, and I see it and just, oh, that's emotion. Being liberated is being able to objectively see those things for what they are and acknowledge that I am the awareness of those things. That's liberation for me.
Mic drop. I love that, man. That's awesome. Would you like to share the quote as well?
I really would, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's hear it.
So Michael Singer is one of my absolute heroes. I wrote on this little receipt. It's a Lapogetta receipt that I wrote in here and marked the page. But here we go. So it's from The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I'm reading it for the third time. It's been absolutely life-changing. And the quote that I would like to share is, "This path of letting go allows you to free your energies so that you can free yourself. Right in the midst of your daily life, by untethering yourself from the bondage of your psyche, you actually have the ability to steal freedom for yourself, for your soul. This freedom is so great, it has been given a special name, liberation."
Oh, goosebumps. I love that, man. That's really, really beautiful. That's so, so true. That's so true. Yeah, when you don't get caught up in the chaos of the thinking mind.
Yeah. Coming out of what you are not.
Thank you for sharing that, Carl. Yeah, it's really meant a lot to me to hear your journey and how you've transformed, your pain into something really beautiful and purposeful to serve the world and to, stand on the shoulders of your old man and to, carry on the work that he's done. I know uh, he passed away last year and it's still fresh for you. And I really honor your commitment, to this work and to this path. And what a beautiful way to keep his work and his memory alive through the work that you're doing, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, David.
If someone wants to connect with you, Cal, if they want to explore working together or learn more about what you do, where should they go?
Growingwithcalum.au. on Instagram or growingwithcalum.au, the website, Growing with Calum on Facebook, any of the three. They're all there. I'm sure you'll put the socials in the description. But I would love to connect with anyone who's interested on this journey, and especially people with ADHD who would like to start taking or living a little bit more liberated, hey?
That's the plan.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, David.
And if this resonated with you, firstly, shout out to you for making it to the end of this really special episode. You're a real one. And, if you found something valuable, please go ahead and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Maybe someone who's trapped, by their thoughts. And, I love you so much. I'll see you in the next episode.